Hi guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about Batch Apex. Now, ideally you'd use Batch Apex when you want to process large amounts of records. And in my example, I'm going to use the database query locator, which can process 50 million records at a time in a selected batch size. And in my example, I'm going to be querying a number of accounts where the billing country is USA, and I'm going to be updating the related contacts to those accounts to have the same mailing addresses as the account's billing address. So let's take a look at this class. I've called the class update contact address. It implements an interface of Database.Batchable object in order to process the records in a batch. We have also implemented Database.Stateful, which will allow us to keep the state of this variable records processed across all transactions in the batch. And then we will implement Schedule as well, where I will show you how to schedule the batch Apex. As I said, the records processed integer variable records how many records we processed in the batch, and it keeps the states across the multiple chunks or batches that this batch Apex class processes. Now, when one implements a database-batchable interface, you're going to have three methods: the start, the execute method, and the finish method. The start method determines the scope of records which we're going to use in the batch. In this case, we return a type of database query locator, and we run a SQL query retrieving all the billing fields of accounts where the billing country is in USA, and we retrieve all the related contacts to those accounts. Then we move on to the execute method, which takes parameters database-batchable contexts as well. The second parameter is a list of the accounts which we've retrieved in the start method. This method will process the records in batch sizes specified, or the default batch size, which is 200. We declare a new list of contacts, which we will update. We run through the list of accounts, which we've called scope in this case, and for each account we run through all the contacts on that account, since we had a nested SQL query here. For each contact, we update the mailing street, city, state, and postal code to the account's billing street, city, state, and postal code. We add the contact to the original contacts list which we declared. For each contact record, we increment records processed, which keeps its state and is declared in this class. And then we update that contacts list. You'll notice there's another execute method. This one is specifically because we implemented the schedule interface. This method takes schedule context as a parameter and is run every time that we schedule this Apex class. When the schedule time arrives, it declares a new instance of this class and it executes the batch. Execute batch method takes the class as a first parameter and the batch size as a second parameter, which I purposefully made 1000 as the default is 200. So when this class is kicked off by schedule, the records will be processed using this method and in a batch size of 1000. Finally, we have a finish method which takes a database-batchable context parameter. At the end of processing every record in the batch, it will run a system debug telling us how many records were processed in total. It will then query async apex job object. It will retrieve the apex job with the job ID which is returned in the batchable context, and it will return all of these fields on the Apex job. It will then send an email out with the job details and the amount of records processed to a specified email. Now, I know one thing that gets asked a lot on the forums is how to actually create a test class for Batch Apex. In this example, we've got a test setup method which will go and create 10 accounts with the name account followed by the number, billing city of New York, billing country of USA. It will insert those 10 accounts. It will then run through all of those 10 accounts and create one contact for each of those accounts with a first name of first and a last name of last and attaching it to the account. It then inserts all the contacts. Moving on to the actual test, I've created a new instance of the batch Apex class we've just created. We then call the execute method with a null parameter. What that will do is it will run this method which will execute the batch and in turn run the start, execute, and finish methods. We then stop the test and we assert that the number of contacts with the mailing city of New York is 10, which is the same amount of accounts we created. Here's the email utils class. It takes in an Apex job as a parameter, records processed, and the email we want to email to. We create a new single email message. We add to the two addresses the email which we've passed into the method. We set the subject to update contact address with the job status. We set the body to records processed and the number of records processed, which we've passed into the method, and we send the email. Now let's take a look how we schedule this batch apex. In your setup, search schedule jobs, click on schedule jobs. You'll then click the schedule apex button and you'll search the apex class that you've just created. Only batch apex classes are listed here. Select the class you created. I usually name the job the same name as the class. Then you have two options. You can either use a schedule builder or the cron expression. You'll see for the schedule builder you can choose weekly, and you can choose the days on the weekly. Monthly you can choose on each day of the month or the last day of the month, or you can choose the first, second, third, fourth, or last, whichever weekday you choose of every month. You can choose when the scheduled job starts and when it ends, if you only want the job to run over a certain period of time, and then you can choose the time. Cron expression, on the other hand, offers you a bit more flexibility. For example, I'll be putting this cron expression down. What this means is it will run at 7:15 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, if you want more info on how to create these cron expressions, I'll drop the link of the Salesforce documentation on how to build cron expressions. The first part of the cron expression is seconds, minutes, hours, the day of the month, and the day of the week. There's special characters as well, the star specifying all, the question mark specifying any, and then you get other advanced ones like the slash, which specifies increments. As you can see in this example, you can say every 6 hours starting at 3 a.m. every day, which you wouldn't really have in your schedule builder. So let's save our schedule, and you'll see that my batch apex is now set to run at 7:15 on the 2nd of August, which is a Friday. Something I would like to mention is rather submit these jobs as a Salesforce system user, not as a warm-bodied user, as if somebody leaves a company, then the scheduled job will fail if that user is deactivated. If you want to test your batch apex, you could instantiate a new instance of your class and run database execute batch, with the first parameter being your instance of your class and the second parameter being your batch size. For example, I could run these two lines in my execute anonymous window and test that my batch apex runs. If you liked my video, hit like and subscribe to my channel for future updates.